Hello and welcome to Good Nightmare, a podcast where I did have a fairy tale episode planned for this week, but after rereading it, I just didn't find it inspiring. So instead, we're going to be looking at an axe murder case. A little bit different, but I will have a special fairy tale two-part episode thing coming up for you soon. Today's case is that of the servant girl Annihilator, also known as the Austin Axe Murderer. Between 1884 and 1885, there was a killer on the loose. The servant girl Annihilator committed 8 axe murders in Austin, Texas. The murders occurred only shortly before the infamous Jack the Ripper killings took place, across the other side of the world in Whitechapel. They were speculated to have been committed by the same man, or at least connected, in October 1888, when the editor of the Atlanta Constitution put forward the theory after the killings of Stride and Eddowes. If you're familiar with Jack the Ripper, which is the case that sparked my interest in true crime, you've likely heard many theories by now that the murderer may have been an American or Englishman who committed these acts across continents. That may be a case worth looking into down the track. This axe murderer was solely focused on killing women. While men sometimes were injured in the attacks that easily could have left them mortally wounded, they were never the focus of the servant girl Annihilator. The killer also preyed heavily on black women, killing in total 5 black women, 2 white women, and 1 black man. Most press at the time put the focus on the killer preying on servant girls and women. However, I don't think it can be ignored that the crimes may also have been racially driven, at least in the beginning. The murders themselves were quite gruesome and were even difficult for me to read about, and I tend to fall asleep to forensic files and graphic murder mysteries. So as always, I'll keep the unnecessary or graphic details to a minimum, and there'll be sources linked in the show notes if you'd wish to read further. The Axeman began each attack indoors, while his victims were asleep and vulnerable in their beds. 5 of these women were dragged outside to be killed, with 3 of them being severely mutilated while outside of their homes. The Axeman's calling card was to insert a sharp object into the ears of the women. 6 of the victims suffered this. After the murder, he would then pose each body in a similar manner. The final 2 murders by the servant girl Annihilator took place on December 24, 1885. And authorities did not report any further crimes of this kind or otherwise as having been committed by the same person. In total, there would be 17 victims, of whom some were only injured, thankfully, while attempting to protect others. Molly Smith was the first known victim, murdered on December 30, 1884. Walter Spencer was seriously wounded in her attack. Clara Strand and Christine Martinson were grievously wounded on March 19, 1885. Eliza Shelley was murdered on May 6, 1885. Irene Cross was murdered by a man with a knife on May 22, 1885, attributed to the axe murderer. Clara Dick was wounded in August 1885. Mary Ramey, only 11, was murdered on August 30, 1885, while her mother Rebecca was seriously wounded. Gracie Vance was murdered on September 28, 1885. Orange Washington was murdered during the attack on Gracie Vance and would be the only known male victim. Lucinda Body and Patsy Gibson were also wounded in the same attack. Susan Hancock and Eula Phillips were each murdered on December 24, 1885, with Eula's husband James being seriously wounded in the attack. It was these 2 murders that would conclude the spree. Over the course of the year-long investigation that followed, around 400 men were arrested under suspicion of murder. Elected officials in the area did not believe the murders could have been committed by any one man or any one group of men, and so the net was spread incredibly wide. Witnesses believe that they'd seen a man dressed in an old hat, or a dress, with a kind of black face paint on to disguise his identity either near or at the scenes of the crimes. There was one alleged eyewitness. However, the testimony they gave differed greatly from the facts of the case, and so it did not seem to assist at all with identifying the possible killer. The man himself, otherwise, did not seem to raise any suspicion, as even when he would attack women with dogs in or near their yards, no dog would bark or raise any alarm in regards to the intruder. Of the 400 men arrested, only one, James Phillips, was convicted. I believe it was separate from the axe murder spree, but he was found guilty of the murder of his own wife. His conviction, however, was ultimately overturned. It's believed that the killer may have fled town when additional police officers were hired, and citizens formed vigilante groups in a sort of neighbourhood watch in order to keep the streets safe. It was no longer easy for him to find victims. According to the Atlanta Constitution editor, this may have been when the killer fled to England and continued their murderous spree, becoming Jack the Ripper. I would love to hear your thoughts about if you know of any suspects that you strongly believe could have been the axe murderer, or if you have any theories about whether or not he possibly could be a candidate for Jack the Ripper. These open-ended cases are always full of speculation, conspiracy theories, and multitudes of possible suspects. It's impossible to narrow down to just one or even 10 that may fit the bill. I'm also looking into a series of axe murders that were committed around the same time and same area. I might put together a future episode about that phenomenon. The next episode I hope to bring you will be a 2-part fairy tale episode. The first episode being the possible true history of the fairy tale itself, and the following one a reading of the fairy tale. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast so when they come available, you can jump right on them. If you want to get in touch with me via social media, you can reach me on Instagram or Twitter at goodnightmare_s. I'm also on Facebook at goodnightmarepod. Or if you'd like to speak to me directly, perhaps with a case suggestion or to discuss one of the cases, I am very responsive on my email, which is goodnightmare_s@outlook.com. And I love hearing from you, so don't be shy. As always, thank you so much for listening and for all your support. I have had more people reach out to me lately, and it's been really great. Until next time, sweet dreams.
Hey, Lindsay, are you ever curious about those old books with weird covers in the bargain bins?
Oh my god, yes. Hey, Daniel, would you be in a book club where no one reads the whole book?
Funny you ask, 'cause that's our show, 33% Pulp. You, I, and a guest host each read a different third of a pulp novel and then recap the whole thing together.
We start with context, the author, genre, themes, and so on. By the end of the third episode, you'll have heard the main plot, our commentary, and confusion.
And sometimes we have companion episodes with related content from beyond the book with other podcasts. We're 33% Pulp and 100% hopeful you'll join us. Bye!